Greetings, Friday Multicasters. Thank you for joining us today. I am, of course, always joined by Jay here. How you doing, Jay?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's a nice,
Oh,
nice week here in beautiful rural Wichita, Kansas.
very nice. It's actually been really nice in Kansas City too. The weather has not been what I normally expect in August towards September is very hot, and it's been actually pretty relaxing to go outside and at least get some
I-
air for a little bit.
I'm knocking on wood because it's Kansas, right? It'll change. If you don't like the weather here, just wait a few hours. So
So true. Well, thank you for joining us. Today's session that we're going to focus on today is the Meraki dashboard. And so think of this as a continuation off the Friday multicast that we did where we created our LLC. We created a branch using the Meraki and to fully show the power of Meraki as we expanded how we use that controller environment and how you can actually manage it from just one location. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share our screen here. We will pull up instantly into the Meraki dashboard. So the one thing I want to mention is we're using the Meraki corporate one as just a demo to go through. Normally you would go into the dashboard.com to log in. I highly recommend if you haven't yet, set up some type of dual auth. Of course, it integrates really well with Duo if you wanted to do an SSO to sign in, but ensuring you've got the multi-factor rather than just a username and password because this is the location to manage your entire network from wireless to security to cameras. You want to make sure that's as secure as possible. And once we get in here, just a little quick overview, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the settings I wanted to mention. Like I said, you'll see this is under demo, so you won't see these on yours, but this is where you can come in. You can change your profile up here on the top right, but everything else you want to focus on is going to be here on the left. You have your organization, your networks, and think of networks as like individual sites or however you're trying to break down those locations. And so if you have more than one of those, they can come down. You can pick the ones you want to look at. But this is just top down how you do it. If you have more than one org, you should be able to come up here and change this if you're listed into other ones. Like I said, this is a demo one. It's just showing the Cisco Meraki one, but this is just the general way to get to the locations that you're looking at. And the way I'm going to start off with is going all the way down to the organization. So it'll kind of be like a bottom up. We'll pivot through some of these, but the first one I'm going to go to is organization. And you'll notice on the first one, there's always a column that says monitor and config on each one of these as you go across. So think of these as once they're configured, you're going to use the monitor tab to ensure things are working the way you expect them to go. So for organization, you have the overview, you change log, login attempts, but first, before you can monitor anything, you need to go into the settings to configure it. So we'll go through the process as we go through these of always looking at the config first, then checking to see what it looks like from the monitor tab as things are configured. So under your organization setting, this is where everything that's under your org is going to be configured. So no matter which network you have set up, this is a top ranking setting that is in charge of all the networks you put in. And so here you can come in and change your passwords. If you how you want to set up authentication, if you did want to do SSO, coming down through administration, what you want your dashboard to look like. If you're going to enable SNMP, either V2, V3, what those passwords are going to be. If you're going to integrate with ThreatGrid, if you're going to allow API access, which is becoming extremely huge because there's so much more you can do with Meraki from a scripting and API side than just what's available in the dashboard, or at least a way to generate reports that is custom to you that really matters. Just create an API, or you can even look on GitHub for some of those. That might just be something that's really particular to your organization, and you can run those, but you have to ensure you're allowing the Meraki Dashboard API to go through. And of course, the big red button that you never want to click is delete org. Of course, I can't because I'm the admin, but um, don't ever click that unless you really want to. And then we'll fly through for some configuration sync. And like I said, Jay, if there's anything you want to hit up or something that comes up along the way, let me know. It's just kind of briefly going through to make people that may not be accustomed to what's all available in the Meraki dashboard or may not see the certain aspects. Just wanted to go over to kind of show you how it is extremely easy to have one place to go to reference everything instead of, oh yeah, I got these are managed by this. I got a SSH, and then this one's only a GUI, so I got to go to this side. So uh, Just
I agree. The dashboard's really intuitive, and the organization settings are pretty high level, right?
yep.
Like you said, this is all the overreaching system settings for the entire org.
Yep.
So
And then from here, we have the MDM. So this is where, if you're going to use Systems Manager, you'll come in here and actually start setting up these settings here. We had talked about how we were going to use MDM to ensure that our devices are what they say they are to get on, or maybe we're going to restrict access based by geographical location. So you don't have to be in the building, but if you're in the patio, you can still access those resources. You can really scope it down based by how you're setting the scope of what you want it to do. So just wanted to show this is where you can start setting those MDM if you want to use OS, file fault. If you're using ICE, how you're going to enroll those together. Administrators are just who's going to have access into your ability to do simple management. You add them in here for your org. This is the license info. So this is pretty huge because you'll need to know what's available inside your organization based by all the models. They'll let you know how many of each one you have, what's the current device type that's being used for those. And just scrolling through here,
yeah,
you can have a license history. So I thought I had this plugged in. When did I ever take it off? You can come in and look to see when it started, when it got removed. So just much more to be able to understand what's happening in your environment based by the licenses that you have.
yeah, that's a really important tab. That's one we touch on quite a bit with folks.
Yep. And the other one is inventory. You'll spend a lot of time on this one. When you get orders, you'll type in either the SO, you can, because you'll come up here, you'll hit the claim button to get the devices that you just ordered in here. Just by putting them in here doesn't mean it's doing anything. You still have to allocate where you're going to send it to. So I don't think we have one that's unclaimed, but you'd come here, you click on add to, and this is where you're going to send it to which network you want to associate that device to, to then start doing the template. So just claiming a device doesn't mean it's going to instantly start working. We need to claim it, send it to the network, and then we can start allocating the configs or what we want it to do from there. So like we said, license info and inventory are pretty much the ones you'll spend most of the time in on your org config. Branding, there's not much here. It's much more, I think, just the way you want your dashboard to look. And then network objects. This is beta, so there's not really much time to spend on it. So like I said, we're going to go through. We did the configuration. Now let's look at the monitor. So from an overview for organization monitor, just to show you more of what your networks look like. So we have 60 networks that are in this org. You can come in, you can check to see why some of these are alerting, how many devices are in each one of these networks, network tags, devices. If you want to see where my MX100s are, usage, connectivity. So just a good place to, if you wanted an overview of what your whole org is looking from a health standpoint, you can come here, check to see which devices are on, and then drill into why you might have a warning for some of these networks.
There's also a great search function there at the top. So if a piece of hardware and you don't know for sure what network it's in, you can actually drill in on that, or for example, look for specific statuses or specific firmwares.
Exactly, good call out. And then change log, always important to know if something's happening in your environment when you can go back and reference it, just listed
Who
there.
tinkered? We got to figure out who tinkered, who broke it. Let's go find it.
Login attempts to find out if anybody from that's not authorized to log in. I think we should actually see mine, unless it's already been pushed down. Should have seen my L. Steiner one being listed here. So, but yeah, just a good understanding of who's accessing the dashboard, where they're coming from. Security Center. And just a good overview of your MXs you have in your environment, what the events look like from there, most affected clients, most affected networks. So a good idea, if you have a lot of MXs, you can just quickly run to, if you have access from the org side, to go to the security center to see what's happening. If you want to look at events for a certain network, so you can, if you really got to focus in on one spot, you can come here and go through it. Location analytics, I think this is the one that goes in with.
I love location analytics. This is so awesome on the wireless side to help with, let's say you work in retail, right, or hospitality, and you want to know, how many passersby did you have versus visitors, and then how many of those visitors are frequent revisitors. That's the loyalty part there at the bottom. Very
Yep.
basic, right? This isn't that elaborate compared to like DNA spaces or something, but really cool statistics. I think just a screenshot and blast over to the marketing teams.
Yeah, the way you change this is based up here on a specific network that you want to look at. So you'll click here if you need to change it to a different view. Like I said, the default one I have is the Meraki San Fran. So that's why this is the only the information presented. But if you wanted to change it, come here. If you need to compare it, grab another network, see, all right, what's happening between my branch in Chicago and my branch at San Francisco? You can look to see which one's busier to at least just get the analytics view of it. Templates. We don't have much for our demo one, but if you wanted to create templates, this is where you could have your org one. We have small branch and a teleworker on this side. Your VPN statuses to let you know where all those connections are if you're doing a lot of hub and spokes or doing a full mesh. And each one of these kind of shows you how much use of that connection there is. And so each one of these pulls into the other sites that we're connecting to go across. So I love this because I love seeing the journey on where things are going. Rather than just being told like, yeah, you have a connection here to here. Like I like the visual representation of what my devices are connecting to and how much connection is being used across that. And if you don't like the visual one, you can come down here to start clicking on the other the other connections based by the networks down here to see it and connectivity. So
yeah, obviously the Marine Corp one's pretty busy there. I think
yeah,
most of them we see aren't quite that
yeah.
crazy looking, but you can tell the Cloud Interconnect San Jose is a big one for us.
And firm upgrades, if you want to do scheduling, this is where you set in your, which device types, when you want to do it. The overview kind of shows you when the latest ones were updated, what they're running, and just a good idea from, you always need to be aware of when Meraki will go do updates because it's the outage that happens just for those moments while it's pushed in, updates comes back online. So if you wanted to try and set that for a certain date that fits better within your schedule, you're allowed to come in and kind of pick and choose when that schedule is going to work on your time. So that's org. I know it's a really high overview, but just to get an understanding, this is, like we said, most of the settings here are just for your organization. If you really wanted to dive into the network side, if you worry about SSIDs, we'll press that when we get to the wireless portion. One thing I wanted to mention was Insight. This is where we had talked about if you have SD-WAN and you wanted to start doing Insight to look to ensure those applications are staying healthy, that users experience as well at those sites. You want to come in here to the Insight tab, and we're going to start with the configuring. This is the licensing. So what we see here is we have a license for a XL. We have a license 1 for a large. We're using 5. We got 2 here. Kind of shows you which one's got the analytics enabled. So this is where the licensing, but now let's get to the fun part and actually see what our web app health is.
Yeah, there's not a ton of config on the Insight side, right? It's mostly just monitoring and analytics, but this is truly like application health. This is that layer 4 to layer 7 user experience monitoring.
Yep. And this is where we can start seeing that our Cisco Commerce as well. Gmail looks good. Office 365 is going well, but we have a problem with web-based email. All right, let's click on the X. Looks like San Francisco and London are having issues. You can come up here, click on this, view trends. And you can start seeing that performance score is dipping mostly due to the latency that's associated with this. So we're going up to almost 100 milliseconds responses during this time when the score goes down. So the hardest part of being a network engineer is, hey, it's not working. Okay, what does that mean? I don't know. It's just not what I wanted to do. So coming in here and looking at the web app health and realizing that, well, it's because our latency is so high. And especially if it's fine now, you can't go back in the past and do a ping test to see what your response are. And if hopefully you have a way to collect it. Well, with Meraki, we can just quickly come in here and you see why that score was rated the way it was. You can be proactive if you have help desk to allow those users to come in to always be aware. So if they start seeing that, they can send updates maybe to those branches and say, hey, we're noticing that there's a web. For this one, it was web-based email. And if you wanted to, this is where if you have support lines, and so web-based mail, there's not much you can do rather than looking at your ISP to see if that's what's causing it, but at least you know it's a latency. It's not an actual problem with those users, their desktops, or the SSID. It's a latency issue here. But very powerful to know what's happening inside your environment. You can then come over to WAN health. Shows you the availability for a lot of the ISPs on the WAN 1, WAN 2. Looks like there were some problems on the second one where there's some high usage being used on WAN 2. So maybe that's a failover, or we're exceeding what we normally see on a day for connectivity there. And just you can scroll through and check all the ones that have the insight allowed on it. And the last one is VoIP health.
Which is always huge, right? I mean, VoIP health.
Yeah,
When folks
and look,
aren't having a good
bad.
VoIP experience. Yeah. Lots of bad. Low MOS scores.
Yeah,
100%
not
loss.
good.
Not good.
And this is where you can drill into and find out those reasons why it's happening. But insight is very valuable to be able to get that history view of when things are going, to get the help app score, to know which apps are affected, and especially right now with Office 365 being so huge, you can set that in here for what you want to use as your configure your web application to be aware when things are not working well. And look, just in that matter of seconds, Cisco Commerce is now have an issue, and you can drill into it, support it.
What I thought was
Before,
interesting, a couple pages ago, he showed the WAN health, and we saw
yep,
those outages for I think it was Meraki, London,
yep,
and both of those circuits. We see circuit 1 and circuit 2 there. Both of those circuits appear to have issues at the same time, so that may indicate like a power issue or something at the site, right? But
yep,
I do think that also correlates with the outages we saw over there on the VoIP health, where we saw 100% loss. That
yeah,
was probably related to those site outages. So
yep.
it's really good for correlating all that together.
All right, I'm going to move over here to Systems Manager. So if you were using the MDM solution, and this one I'm just quickly going through because I really want to spend a lot more time more on the networking side because this might not obtain to everybody, but this just lets you pick where you want to define your MDM solutions, um, how you're going to allow those to enroll, access rights, if you're locking it down based by either iOS or Mac OS, features. If you're going to tie in with ICE, like we're using BYOD for ours, if you wanted to have yours, you tie it in there. And then you come over here to the monitor side and get an overview of what your systems manager looks like. So you have some non-compliances here based off that, device check-in history, the OS versions by platform. So to understand what your environment looks like from this page, while it's spinning. Hopefully the demo gods are good today. I don't know. Looks like maybe not. That's all right. I didn't want to spend a lot of time, and just here we go. Finally came up. We have a lot of Mac OS, we have Windows, we have some iOS, Chrome devices checked in, and of course, a lot of these are not going to be checked in because most of our workers, at least on the Cisco side, are not in the offices. So a lot of these are. I have not seen this in 90 plus days, which makes sense because most of us are still working from home. Then, for those that are trying to access, or maybe they're outside with Wi-Fi, you can check to see where those devices were. So just an idea of one spot to manage all your devices with MDM, and just come in here. Maybe we can spend a video where we actually spend a deep dive into Systems Manager to show that.
Yeah, we should. I think that could be a session all on its own.
Yeah,
With the
exactly.
licensing and all the different feature functionality there. But MDM's becoming huge as more of the workforce has become mobile. To your point about all of us working from home lately, MDM has been a hot topic. So.
Yep.
Now on
Now,
to my
one
favorite
that's
part of the dashboard.
I was gonna say this is
Cameras.
actually turned into one of my favorite. I went to cameras. I got my feet wet working with a customer that was trying to replace their existing. Video on site is so hard because you have to have support on the hardware, and then maybe you have to have support for if you need someone to come in and try and change camera angles or software versions. And so having one spot that you can come and check out all your cameras, and those licenses already come with the Meraki cameras, um, is just huge. It's such an easier way to manage a camera infrastructure. So like I said, we're going to start at configuring camera profiles. You can create these profiles based off if you have 24/7, 720. A lot of these, we can come in, we'll edit this. We won't be able to change anything. It's based off if you're going to enable features. So if you want motion-based retention, so anytime that there's not an active motion, we don't need to store that footage because there's nothing that happened during that time. If I see something move across, yes, I might need to look at that 3 weeks later. So enable that motion detection, which version you wanted to run on there, enable restriction bandwidth. So if you're at a site that's got really limited bandwidth, you can set that up here. And then, what quality you want. So the reason why this is named 720 is because we're enabling 720 on most of our devices that support it.
Yeah, and one thing I really like to point out on this page is down there at the bottom where it shows the average retention days.
Yep.
As you start tinkering with settings on this page, those numbers change. I don't know if it will in our demo since we don't have admin privileges, but that's
Let's
really
see if we can.
important because
Yep.
that's always the first question. Cool. Yeah. That's always the first question we get, right? Okay, so this camera has 256 gig of memory. What does that mean for hours or days of footage? Well, I don't know. What do you want to record? Right? That's a tough question to answer, especially when you have all these different settings and options in there. But yeah, as you
Yeah.
tinker in this page, you'll see the retention days go up and down. Enabling motion-based retention. Obviously, if you're
Yeah.
deleting out old video over 3 days old that didn't have motion in it, you're going to get a lot further retention than you would otherwise. So I love that feature right there alone because that's always a question we have to deal with, and it depends on the camera, how much memory it has, what resolution it can record at. So there's a lot of variables that go into it.
Yep. And then there's the cameras with cloud archive. So I think we're offering the ability to where if you needed more storage, if you needed to hold it on to even what's longer than we have available, you can do a cloud archive version. I think there's an extra license cost with that because you do have to spin up a version instance to put that storage. But this is where you can come in if you're choosing what profile these cameras are for. So I'm going to hit cancel so I don't get yelled at for changing things.
The one other thing I like to point out about Cloud Archive, a question we get a lot is if the storage is on the camera and the camera gets busted or stolen, then what? With Cloud Archive, obviously, all that video is being streamed up, and you would still have that video retained in the cloud.
Yep.
So, that was something we didn't have for a long time. Now without it, it's great. I think it's a great feature for some use cases.
And so what does that look like if you have the cameras in your environment? Just click on cameras. It will bring up all the cameras you have in your environment. What I want to point out here is you can lock this down based by user. So if you have a security guard that's their job is to only watch video, you can create their ID to only access these cameras, and you can lock down which cameras that person has access to. So if they come here and they do a video wall, they can see all the cameras. This will only be what's laid out for them, and they can customize this however they want it to look like. But this is where you can stream this to your security person to be able to watch these. And we can talk. We might even just do another deep dive on cameras one of these days. But you have the ability,
for sure.
Yeah, if you're on site, to not have to do downloading the stream on this. So if you're worried about bandwidth, if there's a PC on site that is able to locally connect to these cameras, then you're just streaming internally. You're not reaching out to the internet because you can just pull from the device there on the dashboard. But like I said, we'll spend time on that on another video. But this is where you can customize, change this. And each one of these walls is different. So there's a bike room. The bike room has all these cameras. So extremely powerful. Think about this if you had in a data center, if you were trying to help with somebody and you wanted to tell them, rack 3 and they're walking across and they're not in the right spot, you can work with them to know it. If it's a restricted area and people aren't supposed to be there, you can set up alerts to, if there's motion, send out an email, and then that email you can take a picture of what that person is to realize, oh, okay, it was just Jay doing a network update, I don't have to worry about it. But cameras are extremely important now, especially since you can't go on site. If you were worried about something happening in your environment, and be able to locate it in one spot inside a Meraki dashboard.
We also have the ability to do a wall rotation. So if you want to put a monitor up, like in a facilities area or security area with a TV screen where it just rotates through all the different video walls, we have that capability. And we can also do motion searching. So things are a little weird right now with COVID. So there's probably not a lot of folks coming and going, but you can actually pick a specific part of the screen and the dashboard will show you the times in the past, however long you want, let's say 12 hours, where it's detected motion in that particular part of the screen, which can be really useful for, somebody came through that door like sometime around 8 a.m., but I don't know exactly. You can actually set up that motion search, go back and find all the specific clips where somebody was walking through that area at that time or around that time.
All right, and then now that we're done with all the more of the org stuff, and then systems manager and camera, we're going to get into the ones that most people might have exposure to. So we're going to go to network wide. Remember, we're under Meraki San Francisco. We're going to go to configure here, and this is network wide settings. So anything we make configuration based here will affect everything for Meraki San Francisco. So you can come in here, change the name. If you want to put in any notes, if you're doing any type of traffic analysis. And so all this, everything that's specific just to this network is where you make the changes inside here for what you want it to look like. If camera LEDs, reporting, everything is inside the general settings. So once we get done with the general config, let's go to administration.
You'll
Administration or go
between
ahead.
this and the organization settings, there's a lot of overlap. Networks are nested inside of an organization. So you see administrators set up here. This overrides what's at the organization level. Same with like the syslog servers and the SNMP settings, all that stuff that we showed in the org side. You can have those broken out by network as well.
Yep.
So it's not an all or nothing type deal.
Yep. And this is where, like we mentioned, if you have cameras on this network, you can come in here, create the user you want, provide the roles that they're going to get. Yeah, camera only admins. What type of alert you want to configure for this network. Network wide, wireless, security, your MXs, your switches, all this is systems manager. All your alerts you want to set up for your network will be done inside here. Group policies. Let this pull up. And so all the policies that we set up for this network are inside here. You need to add a group.
And these are policies that we set to specific users, right? So, a guest, we want to throttle to a specific bandwidth. We can do that. Once we identify that user, tag them as guest, we can apply a group policy to them and do things like that.
No AMP, voice or WebEx. So policies you want to set up there, to the groups you can do from there. Sentry policies. It talks about found inside your systems manager network. So you can come in here, you put the tags you want with it, apply the policy. All right, well, what about users for this network? Now this is SSID 802.1x accounts. Our access policy is for Meraki guest TA. So if you're trying to do 802.1x, you can come in here and do your user management portal. And then what we talked about, it's really important, not just to claim it, but we need to add devices to our network. You can come in here, search for a device, and then claim it to put it inside your network. So then you can start configuring it on the sides. So we've gone through everything on the config side. Let's look what it means when you monitor network-wide. So we're going to come here, you can check clients. This is really the power of Meraki on this side, to be able to quickly find clients inside your network, and not just find them, but also look to see what's happening with them. So we're going to check out this one that's plugged in. We can click on that. It'll show us where we're connected to. So they're plugged into MS4220, connects to our core, shows the usage. If there was any other information associated with it, we got their IP address. We can do ping tests to it. We can look at the applications. If you want to look at the topology, so it's a great place to start if you're troubleshooting clients that are on a network, to go here. You can look for them if you have that information. If not, you can then kind of look for a time frame. But this is a great place to go. And of course, they already skipped us down to topology. Didn't mean to skip us down, but then you can see how everything looks inside your environment based by those by the devices that you have for your topology. So no Visio, it already does it for you. You can come in and quickly find out what you're looking for, the endpoints, stacks of switches depending on the floor. I like the topology because then I don't have to create it, and it's updated too. I don't have to then make revision 7.5 to whatever my Visio one is.
As soon as you make a change, it's automatic in there. One distinction I like to make on the client view under network wide is that these are all the clients on this network, regardless whether they're wired or wireless. So this really is like the master view of my clients and figuring out where they're connected.
Yeah, and you can change it to where I only care about switch clients. I only care about access points. So if you wanted to drill that down, you can pick that up here on the top left. Since it did skip traffic analytics, we'll come here real fast just to show you what it looks like. Mostly tell you what your client count is for this network, the usage, and then if you wanted to see what the top usage is, come in here and click on non-web TCP, Meraki HTTPS. So just a way to see, all right, well, what is this network doing? Come in here for traffic analytics and you can get the good image of what this one's happening for.
That's a question a lot, right? Like, why is the network so slow? Well, I don't know. What application's taking up the most bandwidth? We can
Yep.
quickly answer that question.
Come in here, you can do some packet captures inside for this network. So pick which AP you want, what interface you wanted to pick, and then do a capture from inside here. Once again, so powerful to come to one spot to do it without having to log into devices and then capturing locally, and then how am I going to do a TFTP off that device and then be able to view it. I can do that with one click inside Meraki to be able to get here. Event log, what's happening inside your network. So these are all devices, why they're triggering these events, the details for it. Client couldn't associate for 802.1x. And this is just for access points. So if you want to change it for appliances, camera switches, just an event log to know what's going on in that network.
I love
And
this page for like honing in on a specific client too. Like, this client put in a help desk ticket. They're having wireless issues. We can actually hone in and look at their associations, dissociations, all that stuff for that specific client.
yep. And lastly, map and floor plans. It's extremely vital if you're doing wireless to understand what's happening, where those APs are. And we even have the ability to see what the cameras are too. And so on the first floor, here's the cameras. Second floor, here's our clients. Waiting for everything to
It's
pull up.
pretty bare up there right now. Only a handful
Yeah,
of clients per floor.
there's not going to be.
That's kind of what we expect.
Yeah, but this is where we can come in, create, make changes, and then start applying those devices so you know where you can logically find your devices if you had to go on the floor. Now the fun part, the ones that you actually get to do with the configuring aspects. So I want to start, let's go with security first, because most of the time you're going to set your security before you then set your access and your wireless on those sites. So inside here, the first configuring option we have is addressing the VLANs. And then most of this is what type of setting are we going to use? Are we going with a routed, or is it a site, or are we doing a VPN concentrator? So you pick the mode, you pick, are you doing client tracking? Are we doing a warm spare? You can come here and make those changes. Yep, I know I clicked the wrong ones. We're not making any changes.
Pretty typical like router and firewall settings, I would say,
Yep.
through here. DHCP server, DHCP relay, firewall rules.
Waiting for it to come up on my side. I don't think I like the fact that I hit cancel on that.
It's demo Wednesday. That must be it.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully I actually didn't save that and I did just change it to VPN mode.
Fortunately, I don't think they give us that much power.
Cool. All right, okay, there we go. Patience, young Padawan. All right, we were at DHCP. I think Jay already alluded to, like, this is where we set our DHCP relays.
Yeah, of course you can do onboard DHCP server just like most routers and firewalls. You set up DHCP relay. You do address reservations, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we might just skip DHCP on this demo because I'm having a hard time with it. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's try this again. We'll give it just a few seconds here, and then I can change it. There we go. All right, we're gonna skip. Oh, did it pull it up? As soon as it did it.
Just in time to change it.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, due to DHCP having a hard time today, we're going to skip that and just continue on with going through the rest of these. And so this is the firewall setting. This is where if you wanted to start setting your layer 3 rules, if you come in here, see what's happening, and if you want to deny RPC, if we have any cellular rules. And a lot of these are beta. So of course, with us being on the Meraki's actual corporate dashboard, we're set up for a lot of features that others might not be able to. So if you don't see this in yours, no worries. It's just, it might be coming down the pipe. If you want layer 7 rules, you can come in here, you can add it. What do we care about? Ours is Salesforce, forwarding rules, S&P traps. So this is where we start setting the actual rules that we want our firewall to start applying to. Site-to-site VPN. Pretty sure we can all guess what site for site is. If we're doing SD-WAN via our Meraki, which is what we talked about for our site. If you're going to do a hub, so we can do a hub and spoke if we have like a data center we're sending stuff to, or if you want to do a full mesh. Sorry, full mesh is this one. If you want to do spoke, you can set up with individual ones that you add in which one we're going to do for the hub.
Yeah,
This one we're
basically
going to.
for a full mesh, everything acts as a hub, right? Because
Yep.
everything can talk to everything.
And literally by selecting this, we just had an SD-WAN site come up. If you turn it off, if you wanted to set this up by yourself, you can. But this is why the simplicity of Meraki is so powerful in SD-WAN, because you claim your device, come in here, set it up how you want to off the either spoke or hub, and then you can start adding in rules if you want to turn these off. But these are all the networks that we are discovering based by doing that full mesh. And you can either change what you want to allow and not allow, your NAT. This is your VPN participant, so you know what subnets. If you want to look to see who has priority, if I'm going somewhere, you can check this just to know where your routes are going. But I really just wanted to show on this how easy it is to enable SD-WAN with an MX device just by doing the mesh or spoke. Client VPN, if you're setting up as a VPN concentrator to be able to handle those client VPNs, what the host name is, what subnets, Active Directory, what you're pulling into.
Here's where the real magic of SD-WAN happens. The next tab.
Yep. SD-WAN and traffic shaping.
I mean, having redundant site-to-site tunnels is good, but real SD-WAN is where it's at.
And this is where, all right, so we have 2 links and we have a cellular. We're going to show how we're going to test uplink for those sites. How often are we going to do interval updating for these? And then the really fun part is, all right, which ones are primary? WAN 2 for right now, which is a 6 gig connection. And load balancing, if I want both circuits to be active at the same time, hit the enable, and then it'll loads be separated based by either like a round robin to each single one of those circuits to enable it. So if you wanted, basically you can turn your site into from 1 6 to 2 6 gig connections. If you want to wait until there's a failover attempt, we do a disable, and only then will you start using the other WAN links for it. And then also participate in auto VPN on other sites that come up, and we're going to enable that because we are doing the full mesh. And then the preferences on which way we want internet traffic to go through. So mainly our WAN 2, because that's our preferred uplink anyways. But if we needed to change it, maybe this is a critical one. I only want that to go out WAN 1, while the rest of these go out WAN 2. And that would be a good reason why you don't want to do the load balancing. If you have something that takes a lot of bandwidth, you can prioritize where that goes rather than I just care about availability, and so just use both at the same time rather than I also care about utilization. Threat protection is where we enable AMP. If you wanted to enable those features on your MXs, if you want to enable allowed URLs, if you're going to participate in threat grid, like this is where we start putting the application performance on for the MXs.
All the fun next-gen firewall stuff.
Clicked on content filter, yep, and then we can start blocking categories based by the content. If you want to enable any of these, restrict YouTube, hopefully not, because you do need to go to that High Plains Multicast. Make sure everyone can access that. And then URLs for blocking if you had individual ones you wanted to put on there. And then wireless concentrator.
And this is specifically for like on content filtering. So this isn't a part of like Umbrella integration. So this is more like on box content filtering.
Yep. And then our VPN layer 3 roaming, and we're doing the automatic here. And so, like I said, you do the configuring. Let's quickly look at the monitor. We'll come here, check the appliance status. And just to get a good idea of what's happening here, we have the MX, what interfaces are being used, network usage on that device. And then, like I said, you can click on these to go into each one to learn more about it. If you're doing a hot spare, what is the status of those? And so you can check to see spare is passive ready. WAN 1, WAN 2 connections on those. Security center. This lets you do the events on the settings you have set up, so you can check to see most affected clients on these, when events are most happening.
Yeah, this
Thursday,
is real
Friday.
similar to like the organization security center, but it's honed in on this one specific MX appliance.
Yep. And then MX events that are happening just on this one. VPN status. So this is another view from when we talked about what it looks like from the VPN status down here, but this is for the San Francisco one. And you can check to see these connections mostly are data center. We have Sydney data center, and then cloud, not very much on the cloud side, and then of course then our San Francisco pipe on this side. Usage of the VPN, and then latency that's happening, and then top site to site peers that we're connecting to. So engineering on the London side, data center. So this is where all those connections that you're making, as you come down here, it'll show you where those are being used at. Your client VPN status to let you know where those are happening, how when the start of those happened, and then the route table, which is where we kind of mentioned up here when you're doing the SD-WAN on that site. The site lets you know where we're routing to. So these are all our local ones, our uplink, and then how we're getting to these other sites. So there's 3 routes for these. There's 2 routes. A lot of these are then propagated by who has the priority, who's advertising higher. But just a ability to come here quickly look at your route table. We're going to go down to switching. If you're doing routing or some DHCP on your switching, so maybe that's where your core is instead of doing the MX, this is where we come and change those settings. If you're doing multicast routing, if you have warm spares. If you are using these as a core, you come in here, set up your OSPF routing, your interfaces. Core 1 is most of ours that are set up. Any static routes that you need to set up inside here. ACLs. So maybe you're not using the MX to be able to block where you want traffic to go, or you want to do isolation on those devices so they can't talk to each other off the core. Deny, set up your roles inside here. Access policies, if you have one set up for your users. What are radio servers? What are we connecting to? If you're not, what's guest VLAN are they going to get bumped to? So just if you're setting up access policies for users, you can go in there. Port schedules, if you want to actually lock down port space by a certain time and certain dates. No, we don't have one. That's why I thought it was taking a while to load. Switch settings. This is the general settings for your switches. If you're doing spanning tree, I always recommend enabling rapid. Any QoS that you're setting up in there, MTU sizes, if you have to change those, if you're enabling storm control, just general settings that you would expect to do on your switches, you can come in here. And like we talked about, the importance of doing updates. So you can do either a rolling, like staged on this side, or if you're actually going to set the scheduling. So like our default time is Saturday at 12 a.m. Hopefully nobody's there to do it, and we're not doing beta. We're turning that off. And so that's where we can check those settings. Here we can check the switches that we have to understand where they are. Closets. You can click on these to understand the availability. Like I said, connectivity is good. You can drill into the alerting. If you want to look at switch ports, which ones are the most active users, you come into switch ports to start looking to see, all right, I want to check in my closets. You can split this up based by aggregate as usage. If you wanted to look at, you can search inside here. I want to look at traffic for my VLANs. I want to only look at trunk ports. So then it gives you the ability to see what's happening and make changes inside these. So let's say suddenly I need to make a change off that port. We're going to change that to whatever voice VLAN or regular data VLAN we need to use. Switch stacks. You can do stacking with Meraki. So if you've ever been told you can't, that's busted. You come in here to see who your stacks are and who are your members in that stack. So this is almost nicer than some on the Catalyst side because you have no clue how many are in those stacks when you get in. Here you can quickly see name and how many are participating inside that stack. And then monitoring what your DHCP and your ARPs you set up here. So here's the allow, like we talked about. We had issues with the DHCP side, but if you're allowing, this is where your relays are allowed DHCP servers coming through here. You can check to see what that looks like, and if you had any dynamic ARP you wanted to look at, you could enable that.
And for the record, I do recommend doing like DHCP snooping and DHCP blocking because we've all had those issues, right? Somebody brings in like a Linksys router or whatever from home and plugs it into the network, and all of a sudden a bunch of users start losing connectivity, and it takes hours to track it down.
Absolutely.
So we can just avoid all that heartache by doing some DHCP snooping and watching out for that sort of stuff.
All right, moving it over to wireless, which is the probably the one that most people have all the experience with, is setting up SSIDs and controlling those. Starting off with the configuration side for wireless, you have all the options here for access control, firewall, and SSIDs. We come in here. Like I said, this is a demo environment, so we already have some created, but if you had one you wanted to make some setting changes to, you just hit edit settings. You can come in, change these to what type of authentication we're going to use. We're going to either radius, if you're doing a pre-share key, if you want it open, if you want a splash page, and all this comes in later on as we start doing the configuration portion of it to where what your splash page looks like, if you're doing different type of SSD availability. But general options you can set up in here, you type in the radius server and then what type of addressing and traffic and you want to set up here, what type of VLAN you're going to use if it's local. And then if you're doing the concentrator, radius overview, and wireless options. So like I said, pretty basic. If you wanted to make one, you just go back to the settings here.
This is really kind of the meat and potatoes of Meraki, right? I mean, this is how they cut their teeth, was their wireless infrastructure. So it's been around a long time, and they're really really good at it.
Easy to enable or disable. So a lot of them, I think, for most customers, if you go in here, you'll find a lot that are disabled and not yet created. So feel free to at least make the setting changes you want, and it won't get enabled until you come in. Just like with the old Catalyst style of, you could create it, but you still had to enable the SSID before people could log on to it. What you'll notice is when you click those edit settings, it actually takes you to the access control page. And this is where, so I think it's going to be for the first one. Yeah, so like it's telling you which SSID we're making the changes for. You can adjust that. So if we're going to do, okay, let's see what guest looks like. Guest, no encryption. We're going to do a click through. If you want ambassador, if you want to, one thing I found out for one of the customers I worked with is a paid access. So if you're hosting events after hours and you don't want to allow the ability to have open Wi-Fi, but especially if you're doing a fundraiser or something and you're trying to just find ways to get the maximum amount of value, you could do like a paid access for some of those. I could donate $1 or something to connect. So that was something I didn't realize. You could see it with obviously with hotels or a location that if you wanted to then create extra revenue. But like what's funny is you just click on edit settings, it takes you to the access control, which we're already in. Firewall and traffic shaping. And like I said, we're going to stay on the Meraki guest one. Obviously, we're not going to put a lot of rules on here because we're just worried about basic connectivity. If you wanted to put layer 7 firewall settings in, you could. And we don't have permission to mess with any of the umbrella stuff. And traffic shaping, if you wanted to limit this or for SSID bandwidth, just more ability to start changing the way you want to control that traffic.
The two things I really like to point out here: one, the traffic shaping, the per client per SSID bandwidth limits. That can come in really handy when you start thinking about, hey, I have all these different SSIDs coexisting on my wireless access points in a building. Some of them are production. Some of them might be like very important IoT devices, right? Manufacturing environments or hospitals and whatnot. And we probably also have guest users on there. Well, we probably want to throttle those guest users down and say, okay, we don't want you sucking up all the bandwidth on this WAP. So we can do that on a per client or per SSID limit. Now, the other thing, and we kind of glossed over it since we don't have any visibility to it in the demo here, but the Cisco Umbrella integration. If you have a policy built out in Umbrella, you can come in here and stick that policy right on this SSID, for example. So and that also works on the MX side. If you have a MX network that you want to set a specific umbrella policy on, that's really, really easy to set up. It's all API integrated.
Yep. All right, and go to the splash page. So if you did enable that setting on your SSID, if you were doing it for guests, you can come in here, you can pick the color customization, if there's a different URL you want to be directed to, what you want your messaging to be. So just a way to do a personal touch on those. SSID availability, and this is where you can start scheduling time. So let's say I only want my guest on during certain times. And if you hit enable, you can then pick on Saturday and Sunday, since we're not open, we're not going to provide the guests. But then Monday through Friday, at these times, we're going to set it up. Or if you have, you're hosting events on Saturday, you want to do those ones that are paid ones. So you don't have to come and make those changes. You just set up, all right, I want this one that's a paid one to be open every Saturday and Sunday, and then vice versa. You can make those changes. And so it's pretty cool that you can come in and do the scheduling without, setting a calendar reminder to come in to enable or disable. IoT radio settings, beaconing. So if you're using the Bluetooth, you can understand trying to see how users are connecting in there. If you're going to be advertising those,
there's really cool API driven stuff you can do with that, right? Like if you turn on beaconing, and you have some sort of loyalty application or something, custom developed application, you can look for specific beacons and figure out where a client is located from the client side. So really cool use cases I've seen there are like we do it at Cisco Live, where we have a Cisco Live application. You put it on your phone, and you want help figuring out where you want to go for a specific session. Using beaconing, we can actually figure out from the client side where you are in the building and help give you directions within a building on how to get to that session or that space. So, and that's just one use case. There's all sorts of really cool stuff we can do there.
Yeah. Port profiles. You can assign these port profiles to whichever APs that you want to assign them to. Moving over to radio settings. Hopefully everything, yep, there we go, pulling up. I always fear right now about DHCP. It's going to time out on me.
It jinxed us.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the radio profiling, that if you wanted to start setting up different certain channels you wanted to look at, if you want to come and see which APs, and this is more of just an overview of how that AP is being used. So like 5.2, we're on channel 11, show it auto. So if you did want to change that to manual, you could. SSIDs, our profile, remember we were basing those off the side here to tell you, if it's an indoor, if it's an outdoor. Maybe there's a few APs that are just applied for guests that are going to have certain settings. So you can craft those and then push them over to your APs to ensure that they are getting the correct configurations that you want them to have.
Yeah, we can get pretty creative with RF profiles. A good example I heard a couple weeks ago, we were talking about setting up point-to-point wireless for a customer, and what we were actually going to do was they still wanted those APs to be client serving. We can actually set up like one radio for point-to-point and set up the other radio, the 5 gigahertz, for example, to be client serving. So. Yep. Assuming all of your clients, the majority of your clients are on 5 gigahertz, then you can kind of do both. But that's just one example of the flexibility we have there.
This is that's a good point to bring up about the mesh too, that you can start connecting all these sites without having to run cables. because the APs can then be the connection between those two. So they can still serve the client and also then provide the trunking to the other locations across. And the last one is hotspots. So if you wanted to enable it, you could. You can then set what the name is. I don't think we have any to really kind of show off what you can do with it. Disabled, disabled, while. Yeah, this is just one of those that if we had one we could test with, but with the I don't want to go through and change some of the settings on it. So we're done with the configuration. We're going to do like we did on the other ones, come through and look at the monitoring portion once things are configured. And of course, the first one's the access point, which is what you would expect. It shows you all your APs. You can expand this all the way to 100. Tags are extremely important, and I don't know if I stressed that when we were going through this, but easily to find what you're looking for. So if you have a pretty conventional, like we do a lot of 5 dot, and it tells you then what the AP is, so you floor 5. But if you have someone that's not used to that, they can just quickly look, oh yeah, all 5th floors, or oh, I want engineering. So putting tags on APs and even switching is a good way to quickly find what you're looking for, and then you can apply policies based off those tags too.
Yep.
But
break it down by building, break it down by floor, break it down by department, and everything in between. I mean, yeah, tag them up.
yep. And so this just tells you, if you want to click on it, if there's any alerts that you have, we'll head down then to Error Marshal. Error Marshal is so you can decide when you're going to start scanning for clients. You can then start setting rules on security of your SSIDs. And so there's just a lot of custom settings you can do inside there if you want to look at what rogue SSIDs are coming across or other SSIDs that are being broadcasted, if there's some spoof ones being, or packet flood. So good place to understand kind of what the quality of your environment that's happening with your access points, to come in here and just look to see if it's something that you need to start allocating resources and time to correcting, or if it's just something that's more of a pop-up in your environment.
Yeah, super
Location.
useful in like shared space, right? So if you have other businesses around that are also advertising Wi-Fi, then that can kind of help you narrow down where they're coming from and what that looks like, and of course help you find rogue APs and things along those lines.
And this is where, if you have those maps created, you can actually start seeing where are hotspots in those locations that you've got set up. And it also comes back to even like a time base. If you wanted to see, all right, well, at 10 it looks like this, at 1 it increases, 6 p.m. And so this is one where, especially with COVID happening, there's a few options that we can come into play, to where if you were worried about your spacings on your floor, if we could tie in with DNA spacing to let to give you a better deep dive into what's happening on your floors. But this is just a general view of where people are, where's the most custom hotspots. Maybe I need to put another AP here because I have more hosts than what I can divvy up. And you can change the time, you can change the floor. So more of just another tool to make sure you can really hone in on your environment, to make sure you understand what's happening. This is for your login. So if you do have a splash page, we didn't have any enabled, so there's no content here. But if you did, it's just a way to monitor what's happening with those splash users when they come in. If you have PCI, so let's say you have some SSIDs that you're trying to put credit card machines on, or other things, you can look to see why they're failing. So you can run the scan. I don't want to dig in too much with it being a corporate one, but just know that you can do compliant reports for PCI. Bluetooth client, so this is where that beaconing comes into play. You can learn some of the descriptions, where these users are set up with, what their connectivity is. You can learn more about the environment that's happening there.
There's all sorts of interesting clients out there. Silicon Laboratories and
Yeah.
Texas Instruments. I have more questions than answers now. I may have
Yeah.
to go tinker around, go visit San Francisco one of these days.
Yeah, exactly. If we get to travel again, it's on my list now. You can start then doing reports off your wireless base, so you can start doing RF spectrum. We know how well this AP is using, what the utilization is, average utilization. You can change it either by searching by access point, or if you were just going to scroll through, can't change the list of how many being presented, so you just have to tab your way through if you want. But easiest way is to, at least if you wanted to look at 5, start there and then go across. And then finally is the wireless health. Tells you connections used by SSID, issues that are occurring for some of these clients that are connecting, issues based by AP that are happening, biggest latency. So this is where if you're a day-to-day operation and you want to try and correct anything that might be standing out, is a good spot to come to the wireless, come to your health, and you can instantly start checking to see what's happening there. If you want to look at the map to see where most of these problems are happening, maybe this is where you start realizing someone has a microwave that's knocking out most of those APs in that spot. Connection logs, you can then start seeing who has issues with 802.1x, and then of course alerts if you wanted to set up custom alerts if there's something you wanted to just target on for yourselves. But a great place to always start if you wanted, or either start your day with some wireless to understand what's happening, or if a ticket comes in and you don't have the information of users, but you have a general spot, you can come down and start checking to see if it's APs, if it's how many people are having latency, and so just a good spot to see the overall health. And I think with that, we actually went through everything. So I know it's a little bit of an extended edition. This is with just clicking through to show you the settings without even doing deep dive. So we'll definitely put some notes on here to maybe we do a full class that where we spin up a deep dive on doing SSIDs, or even the tech tips. Now that we have those, we can set up small videos about best practice for SSIDs. What happens if you do secure SD-WAN with Meraki. If you wanted to get some more, I think we should probably spend some more time on cameras and insight to get more value out of what you already have. But that is anything.
There's a couple other things I always like to point out too. If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, or practically
Yep.
any page in Meraki, you'll see. Okay, of course not.
Make a wish.
There it is. It's real small on this page.
Just tiny.
There's always a make a wish button. So if you ever have a feature request, or I wouldn't necessarily say a bug report, but just something you want to see different in the UI, you can plug it in right here, attach a screenshot, and send it on the way to the Meraki engineers. It's a really cool little feature.
Yeah, they actually, this is they look at what's being requested and prioritize new features or things that needed to change based off what the report is on the community. So if there is something you want, I think I've been telling people once a month, set a calendar reminder. If it's not happening, to constantly once a month put that request in of, hey, I would really like the ability to do to be able to look at this setting, or if I could have this information available in the dashboard somewhere. And if there's enough users that have that same thing, they then work it into the GA release of the Meraki dashboard or on the equipment to be able to access that. So
the one other thing I like to point out, you pop open that help menu in the top right.
Yep.
One, the API documentation's there. I know we touched on that really briefly earlier. But yeah, all the API docs are out there. The API is a great way to automate day to day and I'd say week to week functionality in the Meraki dashboard. So we have lots of customers leveraging that, to help roll out new sites, new networks, things like that. Basically templated things that we're going to need to do over and over and over. You can script that yourself and do it in a matter of seconds instead of minutes.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like it adds up, but it certainly does.
Yep.
The Meraki community forums, this is awesome too.
Oh yeah, I get a lot of content from here because this is a great place for everybody that's collaborating either on issues that they've run into, or especially if you come into the API portion, you can come here to see what others are using with it. Just a great spot to come for resource if you have questions, or if you want to post questions in their community is very helpful with trying to respond to some of those as well. So just another way of getting some more help inside your dashboard without opening tickets.
And the one other thing I like to point out under help too, sorry, I keep harping on that one little help menu, the new features button. Yeah, if you click on that, that pulls up like a blog type format that shows the latest new dashboard features. So, new dashboard API is the most recent one there. But basically, as features get added into the Meraki dashboard, this is a good place to find them.
Yeah, it does a good job of also showing what they're talking about rather than just saying,
I love it.
Yeah. So, well, with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hopefully, we are able to catch some of the other videos. We now have tech tips available, so check those out. We'll be adding content to it, and then hopefully here soon we'll have a more of a deep dive, just conversational with some experts or some customers that come on to just give you some idea of what's happening with environments or other customers as they deal with what's happening in the world and go from there. So thank you from wherever you're joining. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See ya.